In 1965, a University of Denver professor named John Williams published a novel called Stoner. It sold roughly 2,000 copies, received a few modest reviews, and then effectively faded into the background of the year's 54,000 other releases. Decades after Williams's death, the numbers moved. In 2013, the book hit #1 on the charts in the Netherlands, selling over 125,000 copies in that territory alone. Similar spikes followed in France, Italy, and Israel. This sudden interest wasn't driven by a big marketing push, but by critics and writers who began describing the book in rare terms. In 2007, the New York Times went as far as to call it a perfect novel. The central mystery is how a book about an aggressively ordinary man, whose life is a series of professional and personal disasters, could become a global masterpiece. On paper, William Stoner's life is a list of failures. He is a Missouri farm boy who permanently alienates his parents when he abandons the family farm, and he spends his adulthood and a marriage defined by cold, mutual resentment. His career as an English professor is stalled by a petty departmental feud that lasts 30 years. He has to watch as his only daughter becomes an alcoholic, unable to find a way to help her. He dies in 1956. He leaves no historical legacy, and even within his own university, his name is forgotten by his colleagues within a few months. A summary of these facts suggests a bleak experience. Yet readers frequently report finishing the final pages with a sense of profound beauty. To understand why this life feels like a success, we have to look past his external achievements and examine the internal logic of his choices. In 1910, Stoner is a dirt-poor Missouri farm boy. He is a product of ancestors whose lives were hard, obscure, and stoic, defined entirely by manual labor and the demands of the soil. His parents sent him to the state university to study agronomy. The goal is purely practical. He is meant to bring back new scientific techniques to keep their failing farm alive. But during a required English course, Professor Sloane reads Shakespeare's Sonnet 73. Stoner finds himself unable to speak or move. He stands in the classroom, realizing that the world can be understood through the beauty of language rather than just the chemistry of soil. He switches his major to literature. He breaks the chain of generational beauty to his parents, choosing his own internal drive over his father's expectations. This was his first act of integrity. By refusing to return to the farm, he committed himself to a life that actually meant something to him, regardless of the social cost. His marriage is another matter. He marries a woman named Edith, and the relationship quickly turns into a domestic prison. Edith is psychologically unstable and physically repulsed by him. She spends years isolating him from their daughter, Grace, and systematically dismantling his comfort in his own home. Stoner's reaction is to narrow his focus. He doesn't engage in loud arguments or seek a divorce. He builds a small study for himself, surrounds himself with his books, and continues his research while the household falls apart around him. This looks like passivity, but in a marriage designed to erase his identity, holding on to that one room and his love for his work became to keep the one thing that actually made him whole. The university is Stoner's refuge, but it eventually becomes the final battleground for his principles. He enters a feud with Hollis Lomax, the department head, over an arrogant student named Charles Walker. Lomax is Walker's mentor and demands he pass his exams, despite having no actual knowledge of literature. Stoner refuses. He sees Walker as an intellectual fraud and holds the line to protect the standards of his profession. Lomax retaliates by sabotaging Stoner's career. For the next several decades, he is denied promotions and forced to teach the most grueling, menial classes in the department. During this period, Stoner finds a temporary love with Catherine Driscoll. It is the only time in his life he feels truly seen and appreciated by a partner. When Lomax threatens to destroy Catherine's career to get back at Stoner, Stoner ends the relationship. He sacrifices his own chance at happiness to ensure she isn't ruined by his enemies. His career is a ruin, and his romance is gone. But both were lost because he refused to bend his academic standards or let someone else pay the price for his choices. In his final days, Stoner is dying of cancer. He is alone, reflecting on a life that appears by any external metric to be a series of modest failures and missed opportunities. He keeps coming back to one question: what did you expect? He left behind no wealth and no fame. He leaves only the single, mediocre book he published as a young man. This is the ultimate test. Does the weight of these disappointments make his life a tragedy? John Williams portrays this final moment as a victory. A stoner dies holding his book. We see a man who succeeded because he spent his life doing exactly what he wanted to do, with people who couldn't break his spirit. He found a passion, defended his intellectual integrity, and survived a horrific marriage without becoming cruel. Our modern world values visibility. We are told to focus on hustle culture, fame, and changing the world in loud, disruptive ways. Stoner argues for a different kind of success. It suggests that living an ordinary life, filled with disappointments, can be a triumph as long as you meet those disappointments with grace and authenticity.